For generations, California represented the ultimate American dream. It was the land of endless sunshine, golden opportunities, and the promise that anyone could reinvent themselves and achieve success. From the gold rush of 1849 to the tech boom of Silicon Valley, California has been synonymous with prosperity, innovation, and the good life. Hollywood sold the world an image of palm trees, beautiful beaches, and a lifestyle that seemed almost too perfect to be true. Millions of people from across the United States and around the globe flocked to the Golden State, believing that California was where dreams came true. But something fundamental has changed. Today, we're witnessing an unprecedented exodus from California. The state that once attracted dreamers and ambitious individuals is now pushing them away. The California dream, it seems, is dying, or perhaps it's already dead. What happened to the state that promised so much? How did the land of opportunity become a place that so many are desperate to escape? The numbers tell a stark story. Between 2020 and 2023, California lost over 700,000 residents to other states. This isn't just a pandemic blip. It's part of a longer trend that has seen the state's population growth stagnate and even decline. For the first time in its history, California lost a congressional seat due to population decline following the 2020 census. This is a state that had been gaining seats for over a century, constantly growing, constantly attracting new residents. That era has ended. But these aren't just statistics. These are real people, real families, real dreams being abandoned. These are tech workers leaving Silicon Valley, families fleeing Los Angeles, retirees abandoning their lifelong homes in San Diego. They're moving to Texas, Florida, Arizona, Nevada, Idaho, and Tennessee. They're leaving behind the beaches, the perfect weather, and the cultural cachet of living in California. And they're doing it because staying has become simply unsustainable. The question we need to ask is why? What has driven this dramatic reversal? The answer is complex, involving economics, politics, infrastructure, and quality of life. But at the heart of it all are three interconnected crises that have made California increasingly unlivable for average Americans. The catastrophic cost of living, the housing crisis that has spiraled completely out of control, and growing concerns about public safety and quality of life in major cities. Let's start with the most obvious problem: the cost of living. California has become one of the most expensive places to live in the entire United States, and indeed, in the entire world. The median home price in California is approximately 2.5 times the national average. In some areas like San Francisco and parts of Los Angeles, it's even worse. A modest 3-bedroom house in a decent neighborhood can easily cost over $1 million. For young families, first-time homebuyers, or anyone without substantial wealth, home ownership has become an impossible dream. But it's not just housing. Everything costs more in California. Gasoline prices are consistently among the highest in the nation, often $1 or more per gallon above the national average. Groceries cost more. Utilities cost more. Car insurance is more expensive. State income taxes are among the highest in the country, with top earners paying over 13% to the state alone. Sales taxes in many California cities exceed 10%. When you add it all up, living in California requires significantly more income than living almost anywhere else in America. For middle-class families, the math simply doesn't work anymore. A household income that would provide a comfortable middle-class lifestyle in most of America barely covers basic expenses in California's major metropolitan areas. Families find themselves living paycheck to paycheck despite earning 6-figure incomes. They're unable to save for retirement, unable to afford their children's education, unable to build any financial security. The American dream of upward mobility and building wealth has been replaced by a treadmill of endless expenses and financial stress. The tech industry, once the crown jewel of California's economy, has been particularly affected. During the pandemic, when remote work became normalized, tech workers realized something profound. They didn't need to live in the Bay Area to work for Bay Area companies. They could earn Silicon Valley salaries while living in Austin, Miami, or Boise, places where their income would go 3 or 4 times further. Companies like Oracle, HP Enterprise, and Tesla have moved their headquarters out of California. Elon Musk himself, once a California icon, relocated to Texas, citing California's regulatory environment and cost of living as factors. This brain drain represents a fundamental threat to California's economic model. For decades, the state could justify its high costs because it offered unparalleled opportunities, especially in technology and entertainment. But when those opportunities can be accessed remotely from anywhere, why pay the California premium? Why struggle to afford a tiny apartment in San Francisco when you could own a spacious home in Nashville or Phoenix? The housing crisis in California deserves special attention because it's not just a symptom of the state's problems, it's the root cause of many of them. California's housing shortage is legendary, and it's been decades in the making. The state needs millions of additional housing units just to meet current demand, let alone accommodate future growth. But instead of building housing at the pace needed, California has systematically made it harder and more expensive to build anything at all. How did this happen? The answer lies in a toxic combination of restrictive zoning laws, environmental regulations weaponized to block development, neighborhood opposition to new construction, and a political culture that prioritizes preservation over growth. In many California cities, it's nearly impossible to build new housing. The approval process can take years or even decades. Environmental review requirements, originally designed to protect natural resources, are routinely used by opponents to block housing projects. Community groups file lawsuit after lawsuit, delaying or killing developments. The result is predictable. When demand far exceeds supply, prices skyrocket. In San Francisco, the median rent for a one-bedroom apartment exceeds $3,000 per month. This has created a cruel paradox. California cities are full of homeless people precisely because housing is so expensive. When a one-bedroom apartment costs $2,500 a month, anyone who experiences a financial setback, a job loss, a medical emergency, a divorce, can quickly find themselves unable to afford housing. The gap between housed and homeless has narrowed to the point where thousands of working Californians are just 1 or 2 paychecks away from living in their cars or on the streets. The homelessness crisis in California has become a national embarrassment. The state is home to about 12% of the U.S. population, but nearly 30% of the nation's homeless population. In Los Angeles alone, there are estimated to be over 40,000 homeless individuals. San Francisco's streets, once famous for their beauty and charm, are now often characterized by tent encampments, human waste, and drug use. The Tenderloin district has become synonymous with urban decay. For residents, the visible homelessness crisis has profoundly impacted quality of life. Parks that were once family-friendly are now occupied by encampments. Business districts smell of urine and marijuana. Petty crime has increased as desperate individuals steal to survive or to feed drug addictions. Many residents, particularly those with children, feel that their neighborhoods have become unsafe and unpleasant. This isn't the California they moved to or the California they remember. The state and local governments have spent billions of dollars on homelessness, yet the problem only seems to get worse. Los Angeles voters approved a $1.2 billion bond measure in 2016 specifically to build housing for the homeless. Years later, the program has been plagued by cost overruns and delays, with some units costing over $700,000 each to build, more than the median home price in most American cities. The bureaucracy, regulations, and political dysfunction that created the housing crisis in the first place have proven equally incapable of solving the homelessness crisis. Beyond homelessness, California faces broader public safety challenges that have contributed to the exodus. Proposition 47, passed in 2014, reclassified many property crimes from felonies to misdemeanors. The intention was to reduce prison overcrowding and focus resources on serious crimes. But the practical effect has been a surge in theft, particularly retail theft. Shoplifting under $950 in value is now a misdemeanor, and many offenders face little to no consequences. The result has been a retail crime wave. Videos of brazen shoplifters walking out of stores with armfuls of merchandise have gone viral. Organized retail theft rings operate with impunity, knowing that even if caught, they'll face minimal punishment. Major retailers have closed stores in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and other California cities, citing unsustainable theft losses. Walgreens closed 17 stores in San Francisco alone. Target, CVS, and other chains have followed suit. For ordinary residents, this creates a sense of lawlessness and disorder. When people can openly steal without consequences, when property crime is effectively decriminalized, it sends a message that the social contract has broken down. Residents feel that their government has prioritized the rights of criminals over the rights of law-abiding citizens. They feel unsafe, unprotected, and increasingly convinced that California's leadership has lost touch with reality. Car break-ins have become so common in San Francisco that residents leave their car doors unlocked and windows down to avoid having their windows smashed. Think about that for a moment. People have accepted that their cars will be rifled through, so they're trying to minimize the damage. This is not normal. This is not the mark of a well-functioning society. Yet it's become the reality in parts of California. The political response to these crises has often seemed disconnected from the concerns of ordinary residents. California's political leadership has been dominated by progressive Democrats for years. And while the state has made strides in areas like environmental protection and social justice, many residents feel that basic quality of life issues have been neglected. There's a perception that the state government is more interested in symbolic gestures and virtue signaling than in solving practical problems like housing, infrastructure, and public safety. The infrastructure challenges facing California compound all of these other problems. For a state that was once the model of American innovation and forward-thinking investment, California's infrastructure has deteriorated alarmingly. The electrical grid is unreliable, with rolling blackouts becoming increasingly common during heat waves. The state that pioneered the modern electrical grid now can't keep the lights on during peak demand. Water infrastructure is another critical problem. California has always faced water scarcity issues, but decades of underinvestment in water storage and distribution systems have made the situation worse. During droughts, residents face strict water restrictions while watching billions of gallons flow into the ocean. Because the state lacks adequate storage capacity, agricultural areas have seen wells run dry, and some rural communities have had to truck in water. For a state with one of the world's largest economies, this is inexcusable. Transportation infrastructure is perhaps the most visible failure. California's roads and highways are congested beyond belief. Los Angeles traffic is legendary. Commutes of 2 hours each way are not uncommon. The state has the worst traffic congestion in the nation, costing residents billions of dollars in lost time and productivity. Yet despite this, California has failed to build significant new highway capacity in decades. Environmental concerns and political opposition have blocked most major transportation projects. The high-speed rail project, once touted as a transformative infrastructure investment that would connect Los Angeles and San Francisco in under 3 hours, has become a cautionary tale of government dysfunction. Approved by voters in 2008 with an estimated cost of $33 billion, the project has been plagued by cost overruns, delays, and mismanagement. Current estimates put the cost at over $100 billion, and completion dates keep getting pushed back. Nearly 2 decades later, not a single mile of track is operational for passenger service. The project has become a symbol of California's inability to execute on ambitious plans. Public schools, once the envy of the nation, have declined dramatically. California now ranks near the bottom nationally in per-pupil spending when adjusted for cost of living. Class sizes are large, facilities are often outdated, and test scores have stagnated or declined. Middle-class families who want quality education for their children face a difficult choice: pay for expensive private schools or move to another state with better public schools. Many choose the latter. The tax burden in California is worth examining in detail because it's a major factor driving the exodus. California has the highest state income tax rate in the nation at 13.3% for top earners. It has high sales taxes, high property taxes relative to home values, and numerous other fees and taxes. The gas tax is among the highest in the country. Vehicle registration fees are expensive. The state even taxes small businesses on their gross receipts, not just profits, through various local business taxes. For high earners, the tax difference between California and states like Texas, Florida, or Nevada, which have no state income tax, can amount to hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. A tech executive earning $1 million annually might pay $130,000 in California state income taxes alone. If that same person moves to Texas, they keep that entire amount. Over a decade, that's $1.3 million. For many successful professionals and entrepreneurs, the math is simple. Leaving California is like giving yourself a massive raise. The pandemic accelerated this realization. When people were forced to work from home anyway, the calculation changed. If you're not going into an office, if you're not taking advantage of California's restaurants and entertainment and cultural amenities because everything is closed, why are you paying the California premium? Thousands of people asked themselves this question and concluded they had no good answer. The stories of those who have left California are remarkably consistent. They talk about feeling squeezed financially despite good incomes. They describe the stress of long commutes, the frustration of never being able to afford a home, the sadness of watching their neighborhoods decline. They talk about the final straw. Maybe it was a car break-in. Maybe it was seeing their rent increase by $500 a month. Maybe it was realizing their kids' public school was failing. Whatever the specific trigger, the pattern is the same. A gradual accumulation of problems that eventually becomes unbearable. Take the story of Jennifer and Mark, a couple in their mid-30s who left San Francisco for Austin in 2021. Jennifer worked in tech, Mark was a teacher. Despite a combined income of over $200,000, they were living in a cramped two-bedroom apartment that cost $3,800 a month. They wanted to start a family but couldn't imagine raising children in their small apartment, and buying a home seemed impossible. Anything in a decent school district cost well over $1.5 million. Mark's car was broken into 3 times in 2 years. The final straw came when they found human feces on their doorstep one morning. In Austin, they bought a 4-bedroom house with a yard for $550,000. Jennifer kept her San Francisco job remotely. Mark found a teaching position that paid slightly less but went much further. Their quality of life improved dramatically overnight. They're not alone. Thousands of tech workers have made similar moves and they're not looking back. Or consider Robert, a retiree who spent his entire career in Los Angeles. He and his wife raised their children there, built a successful small business, and planned to retire in the home they'd owned for 30 years. But as they entered retirement, they realized that even with their home paid off, the cost of living was eating through their savings faster than anticipated. Property taxes were over $15,000 a year. Utilities, insurance, and maintenance were expensive. California's high taxes meant their retirement income didn't go as far. They sold their Los Angeles home for $1.2 million and bought a similar house in Nevada for $450,000, banking the difference and dramatically reducing their ongoing expenses. These aren't isolated anecdotes. They represent a massive demographic shift. The people leaving California aren't just struggling low-income residents. They're middle-class families, successful professionals, retirees with resources, and even wealthy individuals. They're the people who make communities work. The teachers, nurses, small business owners, engineers, and skilled tradespeople. Their departure represents a brain drain and a tax base drain that will have long-term consequences for California. The political establishment's reaction to this mass departure has frequently been characterized by a notable lack of empathy and a defensive posture. Many California lawmakers have chosen to characterize departing residents as lacking true commitment to the state's ethos, or as individuals simply seeking easier paths. A common refrain involves attributing the exodus to external forces, such as the global pandemic, the rise of remote work, or even federal government actions, rather than confronting the systemic issues and policy choices within the state itself. A profound reluctance to engage in genuine introspection regarding California's internal failings has been evident. Governor Gavin Newsom, while acknowledging certain difficulties, has largely stood by the state's prevailing policies. He frequently emphasizes California's formidable economic power, noting its status as the largest state economy and, if an independent nation, the world's 5th largest. He also champions California's pioneering role in addressing climate change, advancing social justice, and upholding progressive principles. While these claims hold some validity, A focus on grand, symbolic achievements often fails to resonate with the daily struggles of a family unable to secure affordable housing or a small business grappling with persistent theft. A significant chasm has opened between California's governing elite and the everyday realities faced by its citizens. The state's political leadership often appears more preoccupied with projecting a national image and engaging in ideological battles than with diligently resolving pressing local issues. While legislative efforts target seemingly minor concerns like plastic straws or emissions from lawn equipment, the crises of rampant homelessness and unattainable housing costs continue to escalate unchecked. The declaration of California as a sanctuary state for immigrants stands in stark contrast to the growing number of long-term residents who are themselves seeking refuge in other states from the unbearable financial burdens and deteriorating living conditions within California. This profound detachment is perhaps most vividly illustrated in San Francisco, a city that has, for many, become a cautionary tale of progressive policies veering off course. Despite allocating over $1 billion annually to address homelessness for an extended period, the crisis within the city has demonstrably deteriorated. The local school board, prior to its eventual recall by frustrated voters, dedicated considerable energy to initiatives such as renaming schools and dismantling merit-based entry to prestigious high schools, seemingly at the expense of prioritizing fundamental educational excellence. Similarly, the district attorney, initially elected on a platform of sweeping criminal justice reform, faced a successful recall effort as residents concluded that his approach had, in practice, diminished public safety within the city. These instances of voter-led recalls underscore a critical point. Even within one of the United States' most liberal urban centers, there are discernible boundaries to public tolerance. When progressive governance visibly falters, manifesting as streets overrun with encampments and drug paraphernalia, businesses shuttering due to rampant theft, and a noticeable decline in educational standards, the populace will eventually insist on a course correction. However, these recalls also reveal the protracted period required for political accountability to materialize, with years of systemic dysfunction often preceding decisive voter action. The corporate sector has, with increasing urgency, voiced its deep concerns regarding California's trajectory. Organizations like the California Business Roundtable, which advocates for significant employers, have issued stark warnings about the state's diminishing competitive edge. Tech industry titans, once fervent champions of the Golden State, have transitioned into outspoken critics. Elon Musk's high-profile relocation of his operations to Texas was notably accompanied by severe critiques of California's intricate and often burdensome regulatory framework. Numerous other business leaders have echoed these sentiments, highlighting the formidable obstacles to development, the perceived antagonistic regulatory climate, and the often unfavorable rhetoric emanating from political figures. Small enterprises have borne a disproportionate share of these challenges. The confluence of elevated taxation, exorbitant property costs, stringent regulatory oversight, and escalating crime has rendered the operation of a small business in California an increasingly arduous endeavor. Many entrepreneurs find themselves toiling for exceptionally long hours merely to achieve financial equilibrium. They navigate an intricate labyrinth of rules. California boasts over 400,000 regulations, surpassing every other state. The expenses associated with compliance are substantial, and the repercussions for infractions can be severe. For a significant number of small business proprietors, the cumulative burden of stress and financial strain has reached an intolerable level. The culinary sector serves as a prime example of these pervasive difficulties. Operating an eatery in California entails contending with steep commercial lease rates, elevated labor expenses driven by high minimum wages and rigorous employment statutes, costly ingredients, and a multitude of regulations spanning from food hygiene to environmental adherence. Profit margins are notoriously slender. The advent of the pandemic inflicted catastrophic damage upon the industry. Many establishments that managed to weather that storm now confront an additional hurdle. Recent legislation mandating a 20 per hour minimum wage for fast food employees. While ostensibly designed to uplift workers, this measure carries the significant risk of compelling more restaurants to cease operations or accelerate automation thereby potentially eradicating employment opportunities rather than enhancing them. This recurring motif of policies conceived with good intentions ultimately yielding detrimental outcomes is a pervasive characteristic of California's governance. Rent control statutes, ostensibly aimed at enhancing housing affordability, paradoxically disincentivize new construction and consequently diminish the overall housing stock. Environmental protection regulations, designed to safeguard natural ecosystems, are frequently repurposed as instruments to obstruct housing projects, thereby exacerbating the housing crisis. Criminal justice reforms, implemented with the goal of reducing incarceration rates, have been linked to a noticeable uptick in property-related offenses. Consistently, California's policy frameworks appear to overlook fundamental economic principles and predictable human behavioral responses. The state's educational apparatus warrants specific examination, as its current trajectory arguably constitutes a dereliction of California's future potential. The very state that pioneered a globally renowned public university system and once boasted exemplary K-12 institutions has permitted its broader educational framework to undergo a precipitous decline. California now finds itself positioned near the lowest echelons nationally in terms of per-pupil expenditure, particularly when adjusted for the state's exorbitant cost of living. Classrooms are often overcrowded, infrastructure frequently lags behind modern standards, and academic performance metrics have either plateaued or regressed. Middle-income families, seeking robust educational opportunities for their offspring, are confronted with an unenviable dilemma. Either bear the substantial cost of private schooling or relocate to a different state offering superior public education. A considerable number are opting for the latter course of action. The environmental challenges facing California add another layer of complexity. Climate change has made wildfires more frequent and severe. Every summer now brings a fire season that threatens communities and fills the air with smoke. The Camp Fire in 2018 destroyed the entire town of Paradise, killing 85 people. More recently, fires have threatened suburbs of Los Angeles and San Francisco. Millions of Californians have experienced evacuation orders or lived through days or weeks of hazardous air quality. The state's response to wildfire risk has been problematic. Rather than investing in forest management and fire prevention, California has often relied on shutting off power to prevent fires, leaving millions without electricity during high-risk periods. Pacific Gas and Electric, the state's largest utility, has been blamed for starting several major fires due to poorly maintained equipment. The company filed for bankruptcy and has raised rates dramatically to cover liability costs and infrastructure improvements. So where does this leave California? Is the California dream truly dead, or can it be revived? The answer depends on whether the state's political leadership is willing to make fundamental changes, and whether voters are willing to demand them. The path forward requires acknowledging reality. California needs to build housing, lots of it, and that means reforming the regulatory and approval processes that make construction so difficult. It means overriding local opposition to development and recognizing that the state's housing crisis is an emergency that requires emergency measures. Some progress has been made. Recent legislation has made it easier to build accessory dwelling units and has limited some local zoning restrictions, but much more is needed. California needs to address public safety seriously. That means reconsidering policies that have effectively decriminalized property crime. It means adequately funding police departments and supporting law enforcement. It means clearing homeless encampments while simultaneously providing real services and housing alternatives. It means recognizing that compassion without accountability doesn't help anyone. Not the homeless individuals who need structure and services, and not the communities that have been overwhelmed by the crisis. The state needs to make itself more business-friendly. That doesn't mean abandoning environmental protection or worker rights, but it does mean streamlining regulations, reducing the tax burden, and creating an environment where businesses want to locate and grow. California can't rely forever on the momentum of past success. If businesses and talented individuals can work from anywhere, California needs to give them reasons to choose California beyond nice weather. Infrastructure investment needs to be a priority. The state needs to build water storage, upgrade the electrical grid, improve transportation systems, and modernize schools. This requires not just money, California has money, but competent execution. The high-speed rail debacle shows that California has lost the ability to build big things efficiently. Reforming the processes that lead to such cost overruns and delays is essential. Education must be prioritized. California should be spending more per pupil, reducing class sizes, paying teachers competitively, and focusing relentlessly on educational outcomes. The state's future depends on educating the next generation well. Every child who receives a poor education is a future taxpayer who will earn less and contribute less to society. It's both morally wrong and economically foolish to shortchange education. Tax reform should be on the table. California's tax system is highly progressive, with the wealthy paying very high rates. While this generates significant revenue, it also makes the state's budget highly volatile, dependent on capital gains and high earners who can easily leave. A more balanced tax system with lower rates and a broader base might generate more stable revenue and reduce the incentive for high earners to leave. Most fundamentally, California needs a change in political culture. The state has been governed by a single party with supermajorities for years, and this has led to a lack of accountability and a disconnect from practical concerns. Whether through electoral competition or internal reform within the Democratic Party, California needs political leadership that focuses on solving problems rather than signaling values. The tragedy of California's decline is that it was avoidable. The state has enormous natural advantages: perfect weather, beautiful geography, natural resources, major ports, and a history of attracting talented and ambitious people. It has world-class universities, innovative companies, and cultural influence. These advantages haven't disappeared, but they've been squandered through poor governance, short-sighted policies, and political dysfunction. Other states are learning from California's mistakes. Texas, Florida, and other destinations for California refugees are working to avoid the policy errors that have made California unlivable for so many. They're building housing, maintaining public safety, keeping taxes reasonable, and focusing on quality of life. They're proving that you can have economic growth and environmental protection, that you can be welcoming to immigrants while maintaining order, that you can have progressive values without progressive dysfunction. The people leaving California aren't abandoning the California dream. They're pursuing it elsewhere. They still want sunshine, opportunity, and a good life for their families. They're just finding it in Austin, Phoenix, Boise, Nashville, and Miami, instead of Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego. They're taking California's entrepreneurial spirit, cultural diversity, and innovative mindset to other states, enriching those places while impoverishing California. For those who remain in California, the question is whether they'll demand change or accept decline. Will they continue to vote for the same politicians and policies that have created these problems? Or will they demand accountability and reform? Will they accept that California's challenges are largely self-inflicted? Or will they continue to blame external factors? The California dream isn't dead everywhere. It's alive and well in parts of the state. In some smaller cities and suburban communities, life remains good. Housing is more affordable, schools are better, crime is lower, and quality of life is high. These places show what California could be if it got its act together, but they're increasingly the exception rather than the rule. For California to revive its dream, it needs to remember what made it great in the first place. It wasn't high taxes and heavy regulation. It wasn't tent cities and retail theft. It wasn't unaffordable housing and failing schools. California became great because it welcomed ambitious people and gave them the freedom and opportunity to build lives and businesses. It invested in infrastructure and education. It maintained order while embracing diversity. It was a place where hard work was rewarded and where the future seemed brighter than the past. That California still exists in memory and in pockets of reality. But for millions of former residents, it exists only in the rearview mirror as they drive east toward new opportunities and new dreams. They're not leaving because they hate California. They're leaving because they loved what California was and can't bear what it's become. They're leaving because the California dream, for them, is dead. And unless things change dramatically, millions more will follow them out the door, seeking their dreams in states that still believe in opportunity, affordability, and the promise of a better tomorrow. The question now is whether California will wake up before it's too late, or whether the Golden State will continue its decline into a cautionary tale of how even the greatest advantages can be squandered through poor governance and political dysfunction. Only time will tell, but the clock is ticking, and the exodus continues.